I'm a researcher for a small team and I'm facing a bit of a moral dilemma. Over the past year, one of our main projects has been the development of a healthier, more efficient energy drink named Roadrunner. Upon the completion of Roadrunner's formula and design, we contacted a local university and requested to use 100 of their freshmen as a subject in the study. The purpose of our study was to compare the alertness of the freshmen and to determine if our energy drink positively benefited them or not. The freshmen were randomly divided into two groups. Group 1 received Roadrunners and were requested to drink one bottle per day. Group 2 was allowed to drink anything except Roadrunner. We specifically selected freshmen due to the stresses involved in the first year of college. To contribute to the subject's stress levels, we assigned them all journals about adjusting to college. They were required to write one entry per day for 14 days. Our study commenced August the 11th, 2015 and concluded August the 25th, 2015. I won't go too deep into data collection and its analysis, so for this explanation, I'll be pretty straightforward. The benefits of Roadrunner were unanimous. Subjects in Group 1 were significantly more attentive in class, and collectively, their journal entries contained a more optimistic tone. The journal entries were one of the many methods of data collection, but I'm emphasising them for one reason. We had a minor roadblock due to a subject in Group 1. Across the board, he was an outlier. And needless to say, he halted our project for several months. The situation is difficult to describe. For that reason, I want to share some of his journal entries. The content of these entries has been altered. This is how they begin. I've never seen my roommate's face, and it makes me believe he doesn't even have one. Benny, he's a real sick fuck. Let me start when I arrived on campus. They were swarming. There were people everywhere. Students, parents, friends. They were all rushing, trying to get to the same place, carrying massive amounts of furniture, suitcases, tacky decorations, you name it. I was standing amid all this chaos, struggling to find my residence hall on a school map, when a group of guys nearly trampled me over. These people were out of their goddamn minds. It took me 3 trips to my car and back to gather all my belongings. Everything had calmed down by then, and when I reached my dorm room, I was really passed out. I dropped 2 backpacks on my bed and laid down on the mattress, but my gaze drifted to the vacant bed on the opposite side. Benny still hadn't arrived. Maybe he was late. I tried staying awake for him, but I fell asleep. I woke up from the nap a few hours later and glanced over to see an empty bed still. Nope, not here, I guessed. The sun was beginning to set, and that's really weird that he wouldn't have arrived sooner. I spent the evening putting my room together. I hung my clothes up in the bureau and claimed 2 drawers for myself. I decorated my half of the room with posters and other stuff. I left my textbooks and student papers on the desk. Lastly, I hung a calendar above my bed and turned around, expecting my roommate to have arrived. It was dark outside now. Where the hell was he, I guessed. I booted up my laptop and connected it with the school Wi-Fi. Before I could do anything else, I had to leave for the first hall meeting. We were lectured about rules for half an hour. When the meeting was finished, all of the guys left in pairs. I suppose that Benny would arrive earlier. I just hated for him to be moving in on the first day. I returned to my room and got ready for bed. I was anxious, beyond anxious for my first day of college. It felt like Christmas Eve. I couldn't sleep if I tried, and when the hallway grew quiet, I actually finally dozed off. Half asleep, I felt a light tap against the back of my head. I jerked up so suddenly that I smacked my forehead against the headboard. I cursed and fell back, head throbbing. I slid out of the bed and shoved the mattress closer to the top of the bed frame. My head must have dipped past the pillow, I guessed. When I felt it, it was one of those knee-jerk reactions. My head ached all night long, though. By morning, Benny still wasn't here. I didn't have time to worry about him, though. I was rushing around and getting ready for class in the morning because I had slept in. I didn't get any breakfast, so I just took a Roadrunner drink instead. It was a weird surprise to me that they'd selected me. I didn't mind though. It was free smoothies and a cash supplement to my college fund. Who wouldn't love that? I was so busy my first day that I returned home after dinner, set my backpack down, shrugged my shoes off, and realised something odd. I was still alone. Benny was nowhere to be found. His side of the room was still empty. What was this guy's deal? I ignored the situation, did my homework, and just went straight to bed. But as soon as I started falling asleep, I felt a sharp pat on the top of my head, followed by the shifting of my pillow. So I sat upright immediately, but something had definitely touched me. I yanked the pillows back and noticed a dark gap between the mattress and the headboard, the same gap that I had closed last night. I stared into the gap, but I couldn't see anything. It was too dark and my eyes still hadn't adjusted. I was too tired for this. I shifted my pillows further down the bed and just went back to sleep. By the next morning, I was met with a disturbing surprise. Like yesterday, Benny's room was still empty. However, one of my notebooks was shredded, as if some animal had torn it apart. The pages were scattered everywhere, but there were a few ones intact, and they had messages scrawled across them.
Don't look.
I almost sprinted out of my bed in my underwear. I glanced back, and within a few moments I just brushed it off. This had to be hazing. They were upperclassmen living in my hall, and that's what it was. I collected their notebook and just dumped it into the trash. Then I went about my day, without any more surprises. When I returned that evening, I had seemingly forgotten about the incident. My mind was just too preoccupied with schoolwork. I sat in my bed, did my homework, and crawled under the covers. Just before I fell asleep, I felt that pat again. This pat was longer though. This one lingered. It was a hand. I shot away from my pillows and scooted over to the other side, breathing heavily. I was petrified. There was something under my fucking bed. A part of me wanted to check, while the other wanted to just dash out the door. Neither of them won, and I just passed out. The next night, I convinced myself that I had a nightmare. Even with that sentiment in my mind, I placed my pillow at the foot of my bed. I fell asleep without the pad at least. But it got worse. I was awoken to a massive, painful jerk. It was a sharp tug, grasping against my hair and pulling me downward. I woke up in the hallway. I don't remember how. I skipped class, went straight to housing, and demanded a room change. I hadn't been sleeping well at all, so I was a bit unreasonable. The woman tried to explain to me multiple times that all the rooms were filled, and there was nowhere for me to go. After that, I demanded to know where Benny was. She insisted that we were roommates. That really pissed me off. It got to the point where she had Benny pulled out of class. Benny was on campus. He had been here the whole fucking time. Turns out there was a problem. Benny's actual roommate had the same name as me, so he accidentally got assigned to both of us. Technically, I had no roommate. I returned to my room and sat in the bed that should have been Benny's. I lay there all day, staring at the gap between the tiled floor and the bed frame. I could only remember the note though. Don't look. My door has been locked ever since. Nobody has the key. I slept on Benny's bed that night without blankets or pillows. Closed my eyes and started to doze off. Before I could though, I felt that fucking pat in the back of my head again. It was sharp, but not as angry as the night before. I cried silently. I don't remember falling asleep. It took me a few nights, but I've learned Benny's rules. He likes my bed, so that's where I sleep. It was a routine, and I kept breaking it. Just before I fell asleep, I'd feel him reach up and tap my head to make sure I was there. Benny never made a noise. By following his rules, keeping a gap between the bed frame and the mattress, he was silent. It was just me and Benny. When I behaved, he was gentle. He had to wish me good night before I could fall asleep. Sometimes, Benny would take his time, but that was okay with me. I'd waited all night if I had. This is where I'm ending the subject's journals. The last few entries were just completely incoherent. And I should mention, these were typed, in particular the 13th and 14th. These were just as if he had violently slapped the keyboard over and over. To some degree, this made us think we were pranked, but this wasn't. Due to the nature of the entries, we wanted immediate follow-up. This might sound unprofessional, but this guy just looked like a meth addict. Skin was shallow, he was sickly, bony even. He lost an exceptional amount of weight, and as if he had just stopped eating. His face was gaunt, pronounced cheekbones and skin just clinging to the face. There were dark rings around his eyes. He was dazed, in a world of his own, but somehow still functioning. But he was only going through the motions. He really didn't respond well when we asked him if he was sleeping okay. It alarmed him, distressed him even, nearly sent him into a panic attack. We hardly even needed to ask. He hadn't been sleeping. Anyone could tell. Not even a week later, he completely snapped, threw himself off a roof. Nobody even knew how he got up there. A professor, he found him the next morning, crumpled up, and then the authorities were all over the case. It was a mess. We were able to see his dorm room just before it was shut down. Our subject didn't leave a suicide note. He left an entire wall, filled with frenzied messages. The predominant message was, "He's always watching." All of the messages overlapping each other, all disjointed thoughts. After nearly being sued, my team is fed up with the matter. They threw out the subject's data and blamed confounding variables for the extreme response. Regardless, he was an outlier. In the grand scheme of things, an outlier is not representative of the whole. For that reason, Roadrunner is proceeding with its production, and he's always watching.